Welcome back to the Shortsighted podcast. Today we're talking to Greg. Greg reduced his myopia from a starting minus 2.5 diopters and minus 0.75 of cylinder, so astigmatism correction, to currently no longer wearing glasses except for driving at night and a few other select circumstances. Really interesting conversation, I think, and also some interesting points of how Greg prevented his myopia without knowing from getting worse than minus 2.5 diopters, and a bit more of his journey of how he reversed it. I think it's an interesting episode. I hope you enjoy it. Here's Greg.
I started when I was 18 years old with a minus 0.25 and a minus 0.5. And what happened was one day I noticed I couldn't see the classroom wall or the chalkboard, and went in and they said, "Here, put these on." And I walked out of the store and I go, "Hey, I can see bricks in the walls and I can see leaves on the trees." And what I realized is I could see just fine, but that put it in what I called HD. I could see in HD again. And I just thought it was amazing. And then oddly enough, a few years later, I needed more. And then I needed more and more. I got up to about minus 2.5 at my peak. And that looks like when I was about 25. And then they kind of leveled off. They never got any worse. But I think what saved me was I don't like wearing them when I'm reading.
That'll do it.
Never did. So I'm in IT and I started in finance. So screens were everywhere. And so, here I am just staring at things up close all day, but I didn't like wearing my glasses. So I think that's what did it.
Yeah, that's lucky. That can make many diopters of difference not wearing them for close-up.
Yeah.
And now, where are we at today?
Today I am wearing minus ones with zero astigmatism. I only wear them at night when I'm driving, or if I happen to want to watch TV and I want a crisp view of things.
And what was your astigmatism before? You had some, right?
I did. I had it at minus 0.75 and 0.5. So it wasn't bad. In fact, I emailed you in the support forum and you said, just rip it off. And so I did. I just went in, I just took it out. That was hard.
Yeah.
I was driving at night and I put them on with no astigmatism, and I noticed the double lines turned into 4 lines way down the road. So I was like, okay, we're going to ease into this. So It took me a while. That was actually, the astigmatism was the hardest thing for me to straighten out.
Yeah, and actually I don't know where I come up with this terrible advice. In general, best thing to reduce astigmatism for close-up first, right? You ease into it, you need less of it for close-up, and then you use it for distance. And then in a lot of cases, people still have like full correction glasses that then they would use for nighttime driving. Although if you can get away with it, this is not a blanket statement, but you tend to work it out quicker if you just do it, as long as it's less than a diopter, right? Like your visual cortex sorts it back out, and eventually the 4 lines turn back into 2 and it's done.
It did. It took a little longer than I thought, and I did it in the spring, so I knew I'd have lots of good light. And that's when I probably made most of my gains that summer. But my wife, who's in glasses and now is interested, since I'm not wearing mine much anymore, I'm going to caution her to not go as fast as I did with the astigmatism. But I just went in with both feet, and I'm just like, let's just do this. So
yeah, that's cool. And what would you say, like eye chart wise, because I can already hear people going, well, that's you went a diopter and a half lower, but can you see the same as you could before when you had the over -2 diopters? Like, is your acuity relatively similar, or are you still working it out at that -1 level?
-1, I hit a brick wall. I see when I'm okay. I can drive just fine in the middle of the day. Okay, so in sunlight, all my things are in sunlight. I drive just fine. Every now and then, if I want to read a street sign, I just active focus. I just kind of bring it in and blink, and it comes right in. I can read license plates. I can see just fine, really. One thing I've noticed as far as what's not as clear would be as soon as the sun goes down, or if it's a cloudy day. You know, if I'm out walking around, then you notice it. But honestly, the hardest thing that has slowed me down is my eyes are used to having the glasses and then like a dead zone where you can't see.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I will, like if I'm head checking or running or something, I'm not used to saying, oh, I have full use of my peripheral vision. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does. It does. It's another little, it's a habit to work out. And a lot of us that used to wear glasses have this thing where we stop thinking about this also exists and including it in the awareness as you're looking at things. Also tends to be useful for improvements. And I understate this a bit, but it's definitely. So with no glasses right now, eye chart wise, do you know, what do you think? Where are you at?
In the daylight, no glasses, 20/30. I could read the 20/20 if my astigmatism wasn't. It's still just a little bit there. So I have a little bit of ghosting. I have an eye chart in my office, and I will check it periodically through the day. And I'll tell you, if I could just, that last bit of astigmatism, if I can just get that cleared up, I could, I mean, sometimes I think I can read the 20/10 in a well-lit room.
There's a bunch of tricks for that. It's like an alignment issue, right? So it just takes time for your visual cortex to figure it out. So if you do things like alarm clock at night, that neon has a second outline, or just like a ghosting, or where just if you look at it, it'll even move around. Like literally, you can watch your visual cortex trying to line it up. And if you spend time, like if you make that a habit, you wake up in the morning or you go to bed in the evening, and you just, that's one of the things you do, is you take 5 minutes. It doesn't have to be a lot. Like the consistency is more important. And you just look at the alarm clock and you watch that second blurred line moving around. Like you can literally observe your brain trying to align them up. And eventually they line up, right? Sometimes they don't, sometimes they do easily. And doing that with things consistently really is helpful.
Okay, yeah, that has been the hardest thing for me, is that I'll stare at a sign with numbers across the room, and I'll just stare at it, and I'll see 2 and 2, and it just takes me a while, and I can bring them in if my eyes aren't tired.
Right.
Now, once I get tired, it's, you know, I lose it, and I can hold it for quite a while. So when I say I'm wearing the -1s, as soon as our licensing departments open up again, I went in last February when my wife's license expired, and I was going to try and pass the eye test without glasses, because where I live, you have to have a correction on your license. So I went in and I almost passed it. It was so close, but then COVID hit, because I knew, I was like, I'm going to come back this summer. I'm going to get this. And then they shut down. So I'm pretty confident that when I go in there, that's my goal. It's still 2020. I was going for 2020 and 2020. And if I can get that correction removed from my license, then that's like I've won. I've reclaimed my vision.
How's the astigmatism with the -1s?
Not too bad. It's at night, like if you're on a long dark road and you look way at the end as far as your eyes can see, you can see the yellow line. It'll start to split. But I mean, when I used to see 4, now it's just a little wider. So
well, that's good. And you're saying brick wall with the -1. What's going on there?
Oh, it's like from -2 to -1, it went really easy. I read a lot of. So let me back up a bit. Okay, so when I started this course, I was at -2 about, and I completely screwed up. I hadn't been wearing my glasses to read. So when I was reading material, I went in to try and figure out how to put glasses over my glasses to do the plus. And it really, I was, I was kind of confused. I was like, this isn't working. I don't know. I'm just not getting this. So I just forgot about it for a while. I waited about a year. And then it dawned on me that when you have low myopia, you don't need to do any of the plus to bring it down. And I was like, well, why don't you just take your glasses off? And then, so I picked up active focus immediately. I was just one of those that got it right off the bat. So I went from -2 to -1 relatively easily. In fact, I was excited to order my new, I dropped down a quarter diopter at a time, and I was super excited. That came relatively easy, but the astigmatism was harder. And with -1 with them on, I can see fine at night. I can drive, I can run, I can pretty much do whatever. So it's about 82 to 85 centimeters to blur. Mm-hmm. So did I totally rabbit trail?
No, not at all. And I'm just thinking, so how long have you been at the -1 level?
Just recently, like September.
Oh, okay. Yeah. The main thing is, so people run into two issues. Like, for one, the last diopter is its own interesting challenge, but also when you go through a 50% reduction, people get a transient kind of astigmatism. Not everybody does, but the eye shape changes, the signal changes. I can't for certain explain the biology, but there's enough change in there to where both images don't line up perfectly, right? Like, so this transient kind of astigmatism, even if you never had astigmatism before, isn't uncommon, especially at this level, right? And especially you just went through a 50% reduction, and your brain just has to work out. Like, your eyes made a dramatic change, and the signal isn't perfect, right? Like, your eyes don't have the same acuity to begin with. They're offset a little bit. Like, there's a whole bunch going on that your brain has to work out to give you that one image with depth information and everything else, right? So there's a lot of super fine tuning in there that kind of tends to get lost, right? So 30% of the time, at least, people go, okay, now it's like I have astigmatism. Like, if you go to the optometrist at that moment, you will get a cylinder correction and it works better. So I always say there's a time period that your brain just has to adjust to the change, right? So that can be 3 months easily, right? And it varies for people because circumstances vary, lighting varies, your habits vary. If you do things like, I love neon because there's something about darkness and neon that only shows you the misalignment, that just isolates only that thing. The rest of the room is dark, and you just have a line that should be super clear. And, because the brightness of neon, so the second line that shouldn't be there, that offset, there's something about it that tends to make it easier for your brain to sort it out than when there is an environment full of things that are offset a little bit. Right. So I like that trick. Candles, people like candles. I'm not completely sold on it, but a candle in a dark room, it moves around. A curious amount of people said it helps them, but I'm still not. I'm just throwing it out there.
There's a house down the road that decorated in neon. So I'm gonna go down there tomorrow night, and I'll check it out. I never thought about that.
Yeah, and it's like the less distraction there is, the more there's a singular thing, right? Like, that's why I like just like neon, because it's kind of bright. darkness, and it makes it really clear where the misalignment is, and it makes it really easy to watch your brain trying to go, where is this thing? Not doing it a long time, just a few minutes, but regularly, right? Like you go to bed, you do it for a couple minutes, you wake up, you do it for a couple minutes, or just, like once a day, like a little bit of I almost say it's like almost meditative habit helps with sorting that out. But even with that, at least 3 months, there's some level of that, right, that recurs. The less light there is, the more noticeable it gets, right? Because more light, pupils get smaller, you have less refractive error to begin with. So there's that. So if you still have astigmatism, real astigmatism anyway, that your brain is working out, and you made a 50% reduction, it's good to set yourself.
It's still there.
Yeah, leave yourself some space, because the next point is once that's gone or really close to gone, you can start not wearing the glasses and wearing the glasses and alternating that in a way that you go, okay, it's not blurry, I'm enjoying the challenge. And after an hour or two, it's not fun anymore. So you put the glasses back on. And instead of making quarter diopter reductions from that -1, you just go that full correction or nothing. So your brain always has that reference of perfect acuity. And when you take them off, you try to get back to that instinctively. So it tends to work out easier from that last diopter to just go full or nothing, as opposed to making more reductions. But it doesn't work really well when you still have that misalignment going on.
Okay. One thing I have noticed is you get impatient because you've made all this, and you're like, oh, I'm the one. And the other thing is I do find that I'm wearing my glasses so infrequently now that I almost worry that I'm getting used to just being at -1. And so I have to remember to wear them. Because
sometimes, and even if you wear them, so one thing that also can be useful is only wearing them for example, after dark. Not saying you have to, but like that there's some distinction where you're it's light out, it's fine, it's good enough, but at dark you lose more clarity, right? Pupils open, rods versus cones, that whole thing. You pop them on, you get more clarity again, right? It's noticeably better, but there's something about being used to making it environment specific, right? Only when you go and see a movie, only when there's subtitles, only when there's like environments where you're more aware of the extra sharpness, and then having that alternating thing be part of like the way you train the dog, like you're training your brain to go, yeah, this is nice. And then when you wake up in the morning, that expectation is still there, but maybe you're not wearing the glasses. Like the more of that is a habit that has a distinct line when you do it and when you don't, tends to be, not always, but generally useful.
Oh, that's great. No, it's hard to do that because, after wearing glasses since I was 18, I don't want them on, so I'm like, I don't want it is so exciting to drive without them. It is so weird to just I can even wear non-prescription sunglasses on sunny days and see fine. And it's almost like I don't want to wear them anymore. And so I get into the point where I'm like, okay, I gotta still work at this, because I still got 50% to go.
Well, the other thing you can do is, if you really, this is kind of part art, part science. And the more you tell me of the story, the more I can add like anecdotes and things to try. There are people who really don't want to wear their glasses. And some of them get to the point where they just refuse to. And in that case, again, the point just being your brain has to be in a place where it's expecting a certain level of acuity. So you need a reference. If you don't want the glasses to be the reference, you can use an eye chart. And you hang up eye charts in multiple places that you frequent, right? In the house, in the garage, outside, if that's possible. And then you can substitute for the glasses saying, okay, I'm going to spend 5 minutes every 3 hours looking at this eye chart and seeing which lines I can clear up with active focus. it gives you a similar,
Okay.
because the point, whether you wear glasses or whether you do this, is just checking in on not getting yourself used to that -1 diopter blurriness, right? Like you just need the
Yes.
reference of going, because you can clear it up, right? Like you have active focus.
Yeah.
And if you do that, the effect will be the same. So for people who absolutely hate wearing the glasses, I'm saying if you can keep to that, where you really do this multiple times a day for 5 minutes, where you just go, okay, that's blurry, but I can clear it up. It'll work itself out pretty much the same way.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. I do have an eye chart in my office, and I do have one actually behind this wall. And a one that works really well for me, since I'm working at home right now, is the street sign. You know, we're on the corner of two streets, and I can sit there and stare at it. And it's a green sign with white lettering. And if on a good sunny day, I can read the house number across the street, which I never could do. I mean, it is so cool. It is just so fun. It's really neat to sit there, and about 2 or 3 o'clock, my office, when I can go in, is got a south and west wall with the eye charts, and I can sit there and I have it marked off at 3 meters, and I just stand there and I check it. But it's the habit of remembering to check it too.
And that's the main thing, because what happens is I'm used to people taking about half of my advice, and usually the convenient half, right? So when I say you can go without glasses, check, but then the other half is you have to have some other reference that you check in with every day, and that becomes a little bit of an activity. It's not a big deal, like nothing will go wrong, but the opportunity for progress is reduced if you're not giving yourself that bit of recurring regular challenge.
Yeah. No, what my wife and I will take walks, and I got to remember to look out, you know, and I just must look down all the time, because I always notice that. I got to look, okay, active focus the tree leaves, you know, look down at the golf course and see if you can make anything out. So, and those work really well too. But it is funny that since I went to -1, it's like you're right there. We're like, you almost don't need them.
And it's a year. I mean, because the other challenge with the -1 is it's a gradual progression, and you notice you're like the way people get winter, what do you call it? The winter mood, the winter blues or whatever it is. You can get 3 months of where your eyesight just doesn't seem to change at all. But if you keep up with the habits, sun comes out, it's spring, and all of a sudden there's a noticeable improvement, right? Like it's not linear.
Yeah.
And a lot of times you notice the setbacks or just the way the biology adopt. So that people complain a lot more about the last diopter because it requires, I don't like to use the word faith, but just the persistence of your habit and the patience realizing that you're not going to notice this the way you did from -2 to 1. It's a really clear delineation of how it goes. But from -1 to 0, it's like what happens is a year from now, you'll have left your glasses in the car and for a week not have thought about them. Right. And then you go, oh, well, wait a minute. I haven't. That's how that last diopter usually goes. You know,
that was the best. Yes, the best day was it was 2 weeks ago. I had a bunch of stuff in my hands. I was heading out the door. My wife says, "Oh, you forgot your glasses," and she was gonna just put them on my face for me. And I stopped her. I looked at her. I was like, "No, I don't need them today." Yes. So she went through that exact thing you said, where she's kind of gotten on the program a bit, and her vision's a little worse than mine. And she went all winter kind of just taking her glasses off, taking walks, intentionally looking around. And we ordered her new glasses, quarter diopter less. She put them on, and she's like, I told her, do the reset, walk around, put them on outside so your eyes get used to them. And she did that. And she came back in. She's like, I was overprescribed. And she went through the whole winter not even realizing she had reduced her vision without even trying. So she did put that on in the spring, and her vision had improved.
Yeah.
So
It's cool stuff. Like once you get over that initial hump of me doing a terrible job at explaining things.
I know.
Yeah.
It's all new.
Yeah,
You didn't have a guideline to write it against.
I know, but I'm half purposely sabotaging. Yeah. But I think once you get into it, it's kind of addictive, right? Because you realize that you're not stuck with these things, and then you just kind of work your way. There's so many little tricks, like the stuff we just talked about, that over the years we figured out. But barring that,
Yeah.
right? Like you're on the way, like you're 100%, well, whatever, but you're a very high percentage chance that you're going to be rid of those things and you'll never need them again.
Oh yeah, I look forward to it.
And you probably won't ever need reading glasses. Another little side benefit of sorting out your eyes.
So that was my catalyst for this whole program. Is I went in to get my eye, because glaucoma runs in my family. So I go in and get the pressure checked all the time. And they checked my eyes, and they said, they didn't say anything I could read up close, but they said, you're at the age where you're going to need transition glasses. So they just gave it to me. And I put them on I put them on, and it was weird. And they said, give it 2 weeks, you'll be fine. And I gave it 2 weeks, and I couldn't get used to it. I still take my glasses off to work at the computer. And that was what got me into this, was that up close reading. Now that was 2016, so that was 4 years ago, and I see just fine up close. I just turned 50, which is kind of weird, and I can see fine. It has not affected me yet.
And it won't. It will not. Like, okay, this is like claims that just a guy with a beard is making. This is not any authority, but in the intervening 20 years, I haven't heard from anybody who said, hey, I need reading glasses now. It's not to say that nobody does, but
right.
The lens hardens, right? Like there's no, right? Like you lose some amount of close-up acuity, but if you're already 50 and you don't need them yet, you're not going to need them later either. The biggest problem is once they sell them to you, the lens did harden. It does make things a little bit nicer. And once you're used to them, right, it's nicer.
Sits in.
Yeah. And then, your accommodation range reduces. And the worst thing in the world is those transition lenses, because your whole accommodation range goes away. You can't see far. You can't see close.
You had like this little line to see far away.
Yeah.
And that's what got me into it. It's because my wife started seeing a naturopath and started looking at medicine a lot differently. Not saying there's anything wrong with the other, but tried her foot, over here. And so that's how I started looking into this, is once I got those transition glasses, it's like, I wonder if there's a way to fix your vision. And that's how I found your site.
Which is an amazing site, right? Just so insightful.
Yeah. Although you didn't start with the beard, so that's where the knowledge came.
Right, yeah, that's where it is. People give
that's
me
okay.
so much, people make fun of me so much for that website. That's fine. I also, on a side note, in my opinion, and this is completely non-scientific or meaningful, I feel like those transition lenses age people so dramatically. There's something that happens when you start putting those on and you start not seeing anything that makes you, I've watched people do this. They fall into this old person thing. You're right, because now you're squinting at the thing up close and you're looking at people at the distance. And I don't know what it is. I can't explain it. There's a movement person that's really well known in that space that I don't know anything about, who talks about how movement correlates with your mental state and your state of mind and who you are and your self-expression, and limiting your movement and creating all of this significant limitation in how you see your surroundings seems like really affects how we interact with our environment. And I see people just with the transition lenses, they just start acting like quote unquote old, right? Because
I'm going to watch that because somebody I know just got them.
Yeah, do because you will notice it.
And he's 2 years younger than me, so I'll see what's going on here.
It's so sad. It's
No.
so avoidable.
I know. Sometimes I get upset when I was putting glasses at 0.25. There was no reason for that. And it just cascaded its way down, and then to put the reading on there, and it's not good. And yeah, and I did the go from 2 to 1. Most of my gains were done during the lockdown, which I think was pretty hard because I work in IT, and IT was in very much demand during the lockdown. So I was working some long hours, and I was right there with that. And I still managed to keep my habits in and take the breaks. And sometimes on conference calls, if I knew this was going to be, if so-and-so's on it, this is going to be a long one, I just call in and hit mute, and I took a walk. Like, nope, I'm out of here.
We don't do that.
Now the whole world's going to know I do that.
No, we'll just blur out your face only during that statement.
I contribute.
Nobody watches these. Nobody knows.
Oh, I watch them. I haven't gotten them all, but I have watched them because I have found that people do say things that maybe you've said, but they said them a different way that just I clicked, And I was like, hey, that's genius. And then I'll read something you put in your site 6 months later, like, oh, he said the same thing. I just didn't get it.
Yeah, but I think that's kind of part of the value in these chats. There's just things like exactly what you said, how it's said and who says it, right? Like sometimes I can say things 100 times, but I'm just not putting the right words in the right order for it to get through to somebody.
And I don't put a hat on. You had one video with that hat that had the eye flaps on it.
I always wear that hat. That's my outside hat, my outdoor hat. Yeah.
That's your outdoor hat?
No, it's not. That's the only time I've actually ever worn that hat.
Oh, well, it's stuck in my mind, so it was pretty good.
Yeah, we were at some hippie market.
The humor.
Go ahead.
Oh, you're digitizing.
Oh.
Well, let's catch up.
The simulation.
Yeah. There you are. Okay, you're cleared up.
Okay, cool. So what were you saying?
Oh, the humor you add helps me remember it. And you're not taking yourself seriously, but you're taking what you do seriously. And it's a good, it's a good level of humor with getting points across. Yeah. And the hat was pretty funny. I don't know why.
Love that hat. There was a hippie market. I'm stuck on some island because that's where the world is. And there was some hippie market, and this girl from Iran was selling those hats. And I just couldn't. It just seemed like she really needed to sell those hats. I'm like, yeah, I'll buy a hat.
Well, you're pretty mobile, right? You tend to travel a lot. So you were?
Yeah, till now. There's nowhere to go now. The airports are all closed.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. Well, I got my last souvenir the last time I could travel, and that's it. I'm stuck here. Yeah. No, we're going to be like the last country that gets to travel again, so.
Yeah, who knows? Who knows? I'm not even guessing that whole thing. It's an island, so it's pleasant, and while I could go other places, it just seems like this is the wise choice for now. It's just to not.
Yeah. Well, it's all right. If you're good where you're at, it's just it's hard because I like to travel. Yeah. And for many years we didn't, and then we could, and now we can't. So, take it while you can. But the traveling is good. And the last time we were in think it was Northern Ireland. We were up on a mountain. It was one of those times where I could look out and I could take my glasses off and see the same thing almost just as clear. And I was like, yeah, this is cool.
Yeah,
so,
it is.
So we have, I do have to add this one in. I read all the material and then I chickened out because I was worried I was going to like go blind. And so I waited and I finally went to the optometrist and he gave me a new prescription. And I thought, okay, now I have a base. And then I found out about Zenny Optical. So now I can go in and order things without anyone questioning. And I looked at my prescription and he had wrote the wrong number down. So I got my glasses back and my left eye was a full diopter weaker. And it was a half diopter. He wrote, it was supposed to be -175. He wrote -125. And so I got it back and I put my glasses on my eye. I just could not see out of my left eye. And I thought, oh, he wrote the wrong number down. And so I wore the glasses for a few minutes and it's like, it cleared right up. Okay, I can do this. And I went a half diopter, and I know that I probably shouldn't have done that, but it didn't affect anything. So I cheated and got a half diopter on my left eye. So
yeah, it's funny how the little things, right? And when you say this, and you and lots of other people, like just the stroke of luck that gets you on the right path sometimes makes me go, man, I should be doing a better job to make that entry point easier. Because I understand how it's a leap, and because I have researched health things on the internet, and I realize how much of a questionable arena the internet is for these kinds of topics, right? And I'm not helping it a whole lot with my beard talk and sarcasm and stuff.
I think actually I think if you were trying to be too serious, I think it would almost turn people away, because it's almost a mockery of itself. Your mockery of what you're doing is mocking the very industry that you're actually serious about being against. And I'm sure they have their place in some circumstances, but not with people that only had a -2.
Yeah,
or a 0.25.
No doubt. I don't know any other way to handle it other than joke about it, because if you know me long enough, you'd be like, I am not the guy to be the eye guru of any kind, right? Like, I'm just not. But the topic, and now in hindsight that you figured it out, it is super simple, right? Like there's tricks and details, and there's not much to it. So I think the humor comes out of all of these pieces of,
Somebody in, I'm going to mispronounce it, Meow. Meow, is that how you say it?
Yes.
Meow. Anyhow, somebody had taken the steps and basically put them down to like 5 lines. And it was like, don't wear your glasses up close. Have them just so you can see 20/30, walk around active focus, get, when you see that clear, get new glasses, 0.25, rinse, repeat. It was something like that. I was just like, it was just basically a nice summary. And I was like, well, that's easy. I could do that, but you can't do that without reading all the other material, because it won't make sense,
Yeah. And it's also, and I think, and part of the thing is, like, somebody told me you can't research everything, right? And that made sense to me. Like, at some point you just need to go, who's going to give me the right answer? But at the same time, I always insist on the long-winded route on the biology and the stuff, because otherwise, how do you validate the possibility of this? Because there's a bunch of other things out there where I'm like, well, these things are nonsense, but you can't assess that until you're like, okay, what do they address causality, right? Do they acknowledge causality? Does the cause of this make sense? Can you offer a solution without understanding the cause? Like, all of these like critical thinking bits that I feel like are sort of necessary when you walk into what is kind of a big topic of, do you not want to wear glasses?
Well, your vision is very personal. I mean, you lose it and you lose your world. And so, yeah, you want to have a background of why you're doing it. And there's really, I mean, you created something that as far as I know, has never been done. Or if it has, in a different way. So you got to have some background in there.
Yeah. I mean, people do. I think like 70% of this whole thing is marketing it, right? Like putting it out there and having these conversations. What I mean by marketing? Like making it accessible. I don't think I've come up with anything new. The details of the approach maybe are more efficient than other things, but I wouldn't give myself a huge amount of credit on the original idea of, right?
Well, but you found a way, and you put it into something that I had no idea I never heard the word diopter. They gave me a prescription with a bunch of numbers on it that were completely, they might as well have been math equations, and I handed it to them and they gave me a pair of glasses. I had no idea. I just none. So reading all that, and now when I work with some medical people. In fact, there's an ophthalmologist that will swing by every now and then in my office. And I'll just start talking diopters, and he starts talking back to me, and I'm kind of thinking to myself, I wonder if he's even thinking like, how would I know all this?
No, he doesn't. He doesn't, because it's so simple, right?
Yeah.
It's a distance to blur. That's all it is. Actually, the iPhone app that is now finally sort of working, we have diopters back in it, and I'm working on slowly making that more and more accessible so people can connect the dots of the centimeter distance equals a diopter number, and that's all it is. You hold it this far, you got 50 centimeters, you got 2 diopters. Like there's no mysterious magic in that number.
Yeah.
Like these things are really important for people to go, because if you're you give up on thinking about it when it looks like a giant math equation and it looks complicated, and then you're like, yeah, this is not for me, right? Like how simple it truly is, I think.
Oh yeah, now I look at it and it's almost embarrassing. Like I was intimidated by this. It's really simple. It's like, you probably have to spend all your time learning eye parts and their long names so you can sound technical. But really, I could almost do it. I could sit down and give someone my last eye exam. It was almost like I was a medical student, just sitting there going through it.
Yeah, and that's why I keep going on. It's not a medical condition, right? It's just a refractive state. It's just diopters is a distance to blur. The idea of prescription is ludicrous. I call it subscription because that's what it is.
Subscription.
And it wasn't. It was not a prescription until a lot of millions of dollars of lobbying happened to secure the pricing, basically, right? Because if it's a prescription, you can say it's $200, even though these things cost $2, and people are not going to ask questions, right? Like if it's a thing, it's a clear curved piece of plastic. Once people realize that a $20 retail price is already paying a good amount of money, that kills that business model. So they spend a lot of effort to come up with this whole, you're a patient and it's a prescription story.
They do treat it like such. It really does. And I never thought about it until I had that, until you kind of bring it out, is what's so medical about it? It's, I guess because it's your eye and they're looking at it. And they can look at the back and take a picture of your eye and show you all the, your retina's here and all that. But it's not, for 95% of it, it's just, here's how far you can see. Yeah.
I mean, there's plenty of things that are medical, right? Like checking your intraocular pressure, 100%. Like those are things that I would not. I like the mainstream and the many discoveries. Like all of the science bits that we have come from ophthalmology journals. Like I'm not denying the mainstream. I'm just saying the treatment is not the only option, right? Like I'm not.
Right. Yeah. Right. And I'm also not talking just the eye exam part.
Yeah.
No, everything else. I mean, no, my mom's had she's had to have the surgery where they put the holes in her eye to get them the pressure to drain, and you know, it's bad. So that's why I go in and have mine checked, and so far so good. But
Good.
you know,
hope it's
one day.
Yeah, no, let's hope not. Let's hope it'll be fine.
Yeah, I'm on the high side of normal. So, and I've been there my whole life. Both my kids are on the high side of normal, and I think my wife is the same way. So it's just something we check.
Yeah.
But it's interesting now that when I go in there, I know exactly what they're saying.
Yeah, well, that's good.
And so it's been a very educational process. I mean, it's something I just never thought I would have gone after. And
I'm glad you did.
It's been great. It's been wonderful, and it's been fun. And I tell people now, I was very quiet about it at first because, you know, the whole unicorn thing. But once I got down to -1, the megaphone was on, and I was telling everyone, it's a good thing, and thank you. I mean, I know it's a lot of work, but here we are on the other side of the world, and it's helping people out.
Yeah. And thanks for taking the time. I really appreciate it. And that was Greg. I hope you found this useful and interesting, and maybe even applicable to your own journey. Astigmatism conversation, of course. With low adopters, when you don't need glasses for close-up, it's always a little bit of a different story than when you're also wearing glasses for close-up starting out. For example, correcting the astigmatism starting with close-out is usually an easier way to go. Lots on this topic. Hopefully some of these episodes give you additional insights. If you enjoy them, subscribe to the podcast. We don't do them super often lately because I'm sidetracked with lots of other things, but I do have more episodes planned, so stay tuned for those. Talk to you soon in the next one.